Value education, that is optional course B.Ed. Unit 2, significance of value education. Meaning of value education. Value education is the combination of two words, that is value and education. Value means to prize, to esteem, to appraise, to estimate. It means the act of cherishing something, holding it dear, and also the act of passing judgment upon the nature and amounts of values as compared with something else. Education. Education means the word comes from Latin, which means to rear, to nourish, and to bring up. Thus, education is to draw out and to lead by bringing up, by rearing, by teaching and training. Thus, the values and education are two faces of same coin. Value education, which develops good qualities, habits, attitudes, aptitudes, and values among learners. Value education aims to develop an individual physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual, that is all round development of all of the learner. Definitions. According to National Policy on Education, that is NPE 1986, the growing concern over the erosion of essential values and an increasing cynicism in society has brought to focus the need for the readjustment in the curricular in order to make education a forceful tool for the cultivation tool for social and moral values. According to J.S. Brubacher, to state one's aim of education is to state its educational values. According to Urban, value is that which satisfies human desire. According to Raf Bassod, the values are emotional adjustments. They are generated by feelings, not not cognitions. They are emotional, not intellectual judgment. According to Raf Bassod, values are emotional judgments. They are generated by feelings, not cognitions. They are emotional, not intellectual judgment. Thus, value education is highly complex. It is essentially a process of education. It guides how to lead respectful, dignified life and how to adapt these values in daily life. Importance of value education. Moral education helps to develop moral characters, broad mindedness, helping nature, sacrificing attitude, cooperation, leadership qualities, social service, and the importance of value education is explained as follows. It broadens pupils' minds. It helps the children to bring all round development. It helps the pupils to become good future citizens. It helps the pupils to bring national integration. It helps to cultivate good habits, behaviors, and discipline. It helps the pupils to develop same positive attitudes like punctuality, sincerity, honesty, and regularity. It helps the pupils to develop interest in their duty. It helps to develop citizenship qualities. It helps to imitate the life activities of great leaders and political reforms. Value education Value education is essential to the children to transfer the cultural traditions, beliefs and customs from one generation to another. Thus value education play an important role in bringing all-round development among the children. It helps to develop good thoughts, behaviors, habits, and activities. Objectives of value education: to develop physical personality and mental ability, thinking ability, moral values, social values, spiritual values, national integration, political, geographical, environment values among the children. And the objectives of value education is explained as follows: to bring all round development among the children, to develop moral values among the children, to develop social values through various social through various school activities, to develop spiritual values through developing spiritual knowledge among the children, to bring physical and mental personality among the children by organizing various intellectual and physical activities in schools, to inculcation of good manners, responsibility, cooperation, democratic citizenship among the children, to develop the attitude of patriotism, national integration, to develop the habit respecting to the teachers, parents, human beings in the society, to develop good personality, discipline, regularity, punctuality, honesty, and other habits, practices among the children, to develop positive thinking, broad mindedness, helping nature, sacrificing attitude, social service, motto among the children. Thus, value education aims to bring all round development among the intellectual ability, positive thinking, leadership qualities, cooperation, attitude, etc. Sources of value education: autobiography and biography of great people, parables, Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, shlokas, poems, newspaper clippings, and episodes from real life documents, literature, social cultural practices, constitution and religion. Autobiography and biography of great people. Swami Vivekananda, Mahatma Gandhiji, and Rabindranath Tagore, Arbindo Ghosh, Jyotiba Phule, Savitri Phule, Adi Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, Rajaram Mohan Roy. Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was born on 12th January 1863. Narendranath Datta was an Indian Hindu monk, a chief disciple of the 19th century Indian mystic Ramakrishna. He was a key figure in the introduction of the Indian philosophies of Vedanta and Yoga to the Western world, and is credited with raising interfaith awareness, bringing Hinduism to the status of a major world religion during the late 19th century. He was major force in the revival of Hinduism in India and contributed to the concept of nationalism in colonial India. Vivekananda founded the Ramakrishna Mata and the Ramakrishna Mission. He is perhaps best known for his speech which began Sisters and Brothers of America, in which he introduced Hinduism at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Chicago in 1893. Born into an aristocratic Bengali family of Calcutta, Vivekananda was inclined towards spirituality. He was influenced by his guru Ramakrishna, from whom he learnt that all living beings were an embodiment of the divine self, therefore self service to God could be rendered by service to mankind. After Ramakrishna's death, Vivekananda toured the Indian subcontinent extensively and acquired first hand knowledge of the conditions prevailing in British India. He later traveled to the United States, representing India at the 1893 Parliament of the World's Religions. Vivekananda conducted hundreds of public and private lectures and classes disseminating the tenets of Hindu philosophy in the United States, England, and Europe. In India, Vivekananda is regarded as a patriotic saint, and his birthday is celebrated. There is a National Youth Day, that is January 12th. Vivekananda was born as Narendranath Datta, shortened to Narendra or Naren, in a Kayastha family at his ancestral home at Gaur Mohan Mukherjee Street in Kolkata. the capital of British India, on 12th January 1863 during the Makara Sankranti festival. He belonged to a traditional family and was one of nine siblings. His father, Vishwanath Datta, was an attorney of the Calcutta High Court, and Durga Charan Datta Durga Charan Datta, Narendra's grandfather, was a Sanskrit and Persian scholar who left his family and became a monk at age 25. His mother, Bhubaneshwari Devi, was a devout housewife. The progressive, rational attitude of Narendra's father and the religious temperament of his mother helped to shape his thinking and personality. Narendranath was interested in spiritually Narendranath was interested spiritually from a young age and used to meditate before the images of deities such as Shiva, Rama, Sita, and Mahavira Hanuman. He was fascinated by wandering ascetics and monks. Naren was naughty and restless as a child, and his parents often had difficulty controlling him. His mother said, I prayed to Shiva for a son, and he has sent me one of his ghosts. In 1880, Narendra joined Keshava Chandra Sen's Nava Vidyan, which was established by Sen after meeting Ramakrishna and reconverting from Christianity to Hinduism. Narendra became a member of a free monastery lodge at some point before 1884 and of the Sadharan Brahmo Samaj in his 20s. A breakaway, a breakaway faction of the Brahmo Samaj led by Keshav Chandra Sen and Debendranath Tagore from 1881 to 1884. He was also active in Sen's Band of Hope, which tried to discourage youths from smoking and drinking. It was in the it was in this um, it was in this cultic and milieu that Narendra became acquainted with Western historicism. His initial beliefs were shaped by Brahmo concepts, which included belief in a formless, formless God and the deprecation of ideology, and a streamlined, rationalized, monotheistic, monotheistic, monotheistic theology strongly colored by a selective and modernistic reading of the Upanishads and of the Vedanta. Ram, Ram Mohan Roy, the founder of Brahma Samaj, who was strongly influenced by Unitarianism and strived toward an universalistic interpretation of Hinduism, his ideas were altered considerably by Debendranath Tagore, who had a romantic approach to the development of these new doctrines and questioned central Hindu beliefs like reincarnations and karma and rejected the authority of the Vedas. Tagore also brought his new Hinduism, Neo Hinduism, closer in line with Western historicism, a development which was furthered by Keshav Chandra Sen. Sen was influenced by transcendentalism and American philosophical religious movement strongly connected with Unitarianism, which emphasized personal religious experience over mere reasoning and theology. Saints strived to an accessible, non renunciatory, and every man type of spirituality, introducing lay systems of spiritual practice which can be regarded as prototypes of the kind of yoga exercise which Vivekananda popularized in the West. The same search for direct intuition and, understanding and can be seen with Vivekananda. Not satisfied with his knowledge of philosophy, Narendra came to the question which marked the real beginning of his intellectual quest for God. He asked several prominent Calcutta residents if they had come face to face with God, but none of their answers satisfied him. At this time, Narendra met Debendranath Tagore, the leader of Brahma Samaj, and asked if he had seen God. Instead of answering his question, Tagore said, "My boy, you have the yogi eyes. My boy, you have the yogi's eyes." According to Banhati, it was Ramakrishna who really answered Narendra's question by saying, "Yes, I see him as I see you, only in an infinitely intenser sense." Never, Nevertheless, and Narendra Vivekananda was more influenced by Brahma Samaj and its new ideas than by Ramakrishna. It was Sen's influence who brought Vivekananda fully into contact with Western esotericism, esotericism, and it was also via Sen that he met Ramakrishna. Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhiji or Mohan Das Karamchand Gandhi was born on 2nd October 1869 to a Hindu Mod Baniya family in Porbandar, also known as Sudama Sudampuri, also known as Sudampuri, a coastal town of the Kataiwar Peninsula and then part of the small princely state of Porbandar in the Kataiwar agency of the Indian Empire. His father Karamchand Uttamchand Gandhi, that is 1822 to 1885, served as the Diwan Chief Minister of Porbandar state. Although he only Although he only had an elementary education and had previously been a clerk in the state administration, Karamchanda proved a capable chief minister during his tenure. Karamchanda married four times. His first two wives died young, after each had given birth to a daughter, and his third marriage was childless. In 1857, Karamachanda sought his third wife's permission to remarry. That year, he married Pudibai, 1844 to 1891, who also came from Junagadh and was from a Pranami Vaishnava family. Pranavi, Pranami Vaishnava family, Karamachanda and Putli Bai had three children over the ensuing decade, a son Lakshmi Das 1860 to March 1914, a daughter Ralai, Ralait Behen 1862 to 1960, and another son Karn, Karsan Das 1866 to 1913. On 2nd October 1869, Putli Bai gave birth to her last child, Mohan Das, in a dark, windowless ground floor room of the Gandhi family residence in Porbandar city. As a child, Gandhi was described by his sister Ralait as restless as Mercury, either playing or roaming about. One of his favorite pastimes was twisting dogs' ears. The Indian classics, especially the stories of Shravana and King Harishchandra, had a great impact on Gandhi in his childhood. In his autobiography, he admits that they left they left an indelible impression on his mind. He writes, "It haunted me and I must have acted Harishchandra to myself times without number. Gandhi's early self identification with truth and love as supreme values is traceable to these epic characters. The family's religious background was eclectic, 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 and Gandhi's father Karamchanda was Hindu, and his mother Putlibai was from a Pranami Vaishnava Hindu family. Gandhi's father was of Mod Baniya caste in the Varna of Vaishya. His mother came from medieval Krishna Bhakti based Pranami tradition, whose religious texts include the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Purana, and a collection of 14 texts with teaching that the tradition believes to include the essence of Vedas. The Quran and the Bible. Gandhi was deeply influenced by his mother, an extremely pious lady who would not think of taking her meals without her daily prayers. She would take the hardest vows and keep them without flinching. To keep two or three consecutive fasts was nothing to her. Rabindranath Tagore, the youngest of 13 surviving children, Tagore, nicknamed Rabi, was born on 7th May 1861 in the Forsango Mansion in Calcutta to Debendranath Tagore 1817 1905 and the Sharada Devi 1831 to 1875. You can remember that Devendranath Tagore was started Brahma Samaj where we have studied in Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was a disciple of this Devendranath and Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. The last 2 days a storm has been raging and similar to the description in my song. Jauro Jauro Barshe Baridar amidst a hopeless, homeless man drenched from top to toe, standing on the roof of his steamer. The last 2 days have been singing this song over and over. As a result, the pelting sound of the intense rain, the wail of the wind, the sound of die, heavying Gorai River have assumed a fresh life and found a new language, and one have felt like a major actor in his new musical drama unfolding before me. Tagore was raised mostly by servants. His mother had died in his early childhood, and his father traveled widely. The Tagore family was at forefront of the Bengal Renaissance. They hosted the publication of literary magazines, theatre, and recitals of Bengali and Western classical music featured there regularly. Tagore's father invited several professional Draupad musicians to stay in the house and teach Indian classical music to the children. Tagore's oldest brother Vijendranath was a philosopher and poet. Another brother, Satyendranath, was the first Indian appointed to the elite and formerly all European Indian civil service. Yet another brother, Frotrendranath, was a musician, composer, and playwright. His sister Swarna Kumari became a novelist, and Jyotindranath's wife Kadambari Devi, slightly older than Tagore, was a dear friend and powerful influence. Her abrupt suicide in 1884, soon after he married, left him profoundly distraught for years. Tagore Tagore largely avoided classroom schooling and preferred to roam the manor or nearby Bolpur and Panihatir, and which the family visited. His brother Yemendranath tutored and physically conditioned him. by having him swim the Ganges or trek through hills by gymnastics and by practicing judo and wrestling. He learned drawing, anatomy, geography, history, literature, mathematics, Sanskrit, and English. His least favorite subject, Tagore, loathed formal education. His scholarly travels at a local presidency voltage planned a single day. Years later, he yelled that proper teaching does not explain things. Proper teaching stokes curiosity. After his Upanayana, that is coming of age, right at age 11, Tagore and his father left Calcutta in February 1873 to tour India for several months, visiting his father's Santiniketan estate and Amritsar before reaching the Himalayan hill station of Dalhousie. There, Tagore read biographies, studied history, astronomy, modern science, Sanskrit, and examined the classical poetry of Kalidasa during his 1 month stay at Amritsar in 1873. He was greatly influenced by melodious Gurbani and Nanak Bani being sung at Golden Temple, for which both father and son were regular visitors. He mentions about this in his My Reminiscence Reminiscence in 1912. The Golden Temple of Amritsar comes back to me like a dream. Many a morning have I accompanied my father to this Gurudwara of the Sikhs in the middle of the lake. There the sacred chanting resounds continually, my father seated amidst the throng of worshippers would sometimes add his voice to the hymn of praise, and finding a stranger joining in their devotions, they would wax enthusiastically cordial, and we found return loaded with the sanctified offerings of sugar, crystals, and other sweets. He wrote 6 poems relating to Sikhism and number of articles in Bengali child magazines about Sikhism. Tagore returned to Jorosanko and completed a set of major works by 1877, one of them a long poem in the Maithili style of Vidyapati. As a joke, he claimed that these were the lost works of what he claimed it was. A newly discovered 17th century Vaishapava poet, Banusmiha, religion experts accepted them as the last works of Banu Simha. He debuted. Tagore returned to Jorasang and completed a set of major works in 1877. One of them, a long poem in the Maithili style of Vidyapati. As a joke, he claimed that these were the lost works of what he claimed was a newly discovered 17th century Vaishapava poet. Banu Simha. Regional experts accepted them as the lost works of Banu Simha. He debuted in the short story genre in Bengali with Bikrani, the Beggar Woman, published in the same year. Santa Sandik 1882 includes the poem Nirjar Swapna Bang, the rousing of the waterfall. Arbindo Ghosh. Arbindo Ghosh was born in Kolkata, now Kolkata, and Bengal Presidency, India on 15th August 1872. His father, Krishnadan Ghosh, was then assistant surgeon of Rangpur in Bengal and a former member of Brahmo Samaj religious reform movement who had become enamored and with the new idea of evolution evolution while pursuing medical studies in Britain. His mother was Swarnalata Devi. His mother was Swarnalata Devi, whose father was Sri Rajnarayan Bose, a leading figure in the Samaj. She had been sent to the more soldier's surroundings of Calcutta for Arbindo's birth. Arbindo had two elder siblings, Benoy Bhushan and Manmohan Bhushan, a younger sister Sarojini and younger brother Barindra Kumar, also referred as Baren. Young Arbindo was brought up speaking English but used Hindustani to communicate with servants. Although his family were Bengali, his father believed British culture to be superior. He and his two elder siblings were sent to the English speaking Loreto Imis boarding school in Darjeeling, in part to improve their language skills and in part to distance them from their mother, who had developed a mental illness soon after the birth of her first child. Darjeeling was a center of British life in India, and the school was run by Irish nuns, through which the boys would have been exposed to Christian religious teaching and symbolism. During his stay at Baroda, he contributed to many articles to Hindu Prakash and spoke as a chairman of the Baroda College Board. He started taking an active interest in the politics of India's independence struggle against British rule. Working behind the scenes as his position in the Baroda state administration barred him from overall political activity. He linked up with resistance groups in Bengal and Madhya Pradesh. While traveling to these states, he established contact with Lokamanya Tilak and Sister Nivedita. He arranged the military training of Fatindranath Banerjee, Nirmalamba Swami in the Baroda army and then dispatched him to organize the resistance groups in Bengal. Aurobindo often traveled between Baroda and Bengal at first in a bid to re-establish links between his parents, families, and other Bengali relatives, including his sister Sarojini and brother Barin, and later increasingly to British resistance groups across the presidency. He formally moved to Calcutta in 1906 after the announcement of the partition of Bengal. Aged 28, he had married 14-year-old Mrinalini, daughter of Bhupal Chandra Bose, a senior official in government service. When he visited Calcutta in 1901, Mrinalini died in December 1918 during the influenza pandemic. Arbindo was influenced by studies on rebellion and revolutions against England in medieval France and the revolts in America and Italy. In his public activities, he favored non-cooperation and non-cooperation and passive resistance. In private, he took up secret revolutionary activity as a preparation for open revolt in case that the passive revolt failed. In Bengal, with Baron's help, he established contacts with revolutionaries, inspiring radicals such as Jatin Banerjee, and Surendranath Tagore. He helped establish a series of youthful clubs including Anushrilan Samiti of Calcutta in 1902. Pule's father, Govinda Rao, carried on the family business along with his brothers. His mother, Chimnabai, died when he was only 9 months old, and he had one elder brother. The Mali community did not set much store by education, and after attending primary school to learn basics of learning, reading, writing, and arithmetic, Pule was withdrawn from school, he joined the men folk of his family at work, both in the shop and the arm. However, Christian convert from the same Mali caste as Pule recognized his intelligence and persuaded Pule's father to allow Pule to attend the local Scottish missions high school run by Murray Mitchell. And Pule completed his English schooling in 1847. As per custom, he was married young, at the age of 13, to a girl to his own community chosen by his father. The turning point in his life was in 1848 when he attended the wedding of a friend who was a Brahmin. Pule participated in the customary marriage procession but was later rebugged and insulted by his friend's parents for doing that. They told him that he, being for a lower caste, should have not the sense to keep away from that ceremony. This incident profoundly affected Pule on the injustice of the caste system. View on religion and caste. Untouchable castes in Pune during Jyotiba's time were kept segregated from the rest of the society. Jyotiba did not like this kind of discrimination. He also saw Rama, the hero of the Indian epic Ramayana, as a symbol of oppression. Stemming from the Aryan conquest, Pule's critique of the caste system began with this attack on the Vedas, the, the most fundamental text of upper caste Hindus. He considered them to be a form of false consciousness. He criticized the role of Brahmins in Hindu society and blamed the Brahmins as conspiring to keep the lower caste oppressed and suppressed. In his book, Gulmagiri, Gulam, Gulamgiri, he openly thanks Christian missionaries and the British colonists for making the lower caste realize that they are worthy of all human rights too. Pule believed in overthrowing the social system in which people had been deliberately made dependent on others, illit- illiterate, ignorant, and poor with a view to exploiting them. To him, blind faith eradication formed part of a broad society, the broad socio-economic transformation. This was a strategy for ending exploitation of human beings. Mere advice, education, and alternative ways of living are not enough unless the economic framework of exploitation comes to an end. His most famous poem reads, lack of education leads to lack of wisdom, leads lack of education to lack of wisdom, which leads to lack of morals, which leads to lack of progress, which leads to lack of money, which leads to the oppression of the lower caste or classes. See what state of the society one lack of education can cause. I repeat, lack of education leads to lack of wisdom, which leads to lack of morals, which leads to lack of progress, which leads to lack of money, which leads to oppression of the lower classes. See what state of the society one lack of education can cause. Notably, he dedicated his book Gulamgiri, Slavery, a seminal one woman caste and reform to the African American movement to end slavery. His Akandas were originally organically linked to the Abhangas of Marathi Varkari Saint Tukaram. He is credited with introducing the Marathi word Dalit, broken crushed, as a descriptor for those people who were outside the traditional Varna system. The terminology was later popularized in 1970s by the Dalit Panthers. At an education at an education commission hearing in 1884, Pule also called for help in providing education for lower caste. To implement it, he advocated making primary education compulsory in villages. He also asked for special incentives to get more lower caste people in high schools and colleges. Jyoti Rao Govindarao Pule was born into a virtually illiterate family that belonged to the Mali caste of gardeners and villageable or vegetable farmers. The original surname of the family had been, I repeat, Jyotirao Govindrao Pule was born into a virtually illiterate family that belonged to the Mali caste of gardeners and vegetable farmers. The original surname of the family had been Gore. The ancestral village of the family was Katkon. In present day Katau taluk of Satara district, now in Maharashtra state. Pule's great grandfather worked as Chaugula, a village servant. Jyotiba's great grandfather had settled in Kanwadi in near Savod in present day Pune district. Their a son was born, Shetiba, a grandfather of Jyotiba Pule, and his grandfather proposed after starting a business of selling flowers, garlands, and flower arrangements for social social events like weddings. The family owned some farmland as well as shop in the city. Since Pule's father and two uncles served as florists under the last of Peshwas, whose patronage they enjoyed, the family came to be known as Pule Flower Man. Savitri Pule. Savitri Pule, whose 186th birth anniversary is being visionary for ahead of her time for 21st century skeptics who are offended by the labor of feminism. She should be a shining example of courage in the face of adversity. Born this day in 1831 to a family of farmers in Naingon, Maharashtra, Savitribai Phule was a poet, social reformer, and educationist responsible for revolutionizing women's education. A companion for women's rights, she waged lifelong battles against social evils like child marriage, sati ritual, self immolation of Hindu widows at their husbands' pairs, and patriarchic patriarchy in general. Married married off to Jyotiba Phule when she was only 9 and he was 12. She did not have children of her own but adopted Yeshwant Rao, son of a widowed Brahmin. In the 19th century, such practices were scoffed at, though family objection did not deter the police from striking out on their own. Savitri Bai went on to establish the first school for women in Bidwada, Pune, a seat of Brahminism, and become the first woman teacher in the country. Even more radically, she kept her establishment open to women from all castes. She would build 18 such schools in her lifetime in the region. In all her endeavors, whether it was building as well for lower caste people to fight casteist patriarchy or in her pursuit of women's causes, Savitri Bai was joined by her husband who educated her at home. Police started a home for the prevention of infanticides in their own house in 1863 to create a refuge for widows who had been victims of sexual exploitation. They also took in rape survivors and other women who, after becoming pregnant, either killed themselves or their newborn for fear of social banishment. Savitri Bai died of infection while taking care of patients during the third global pandemic of bubonic plague in 1897. The government of Maharashtra instituted an award in her name to honor women social reformers. A stamp was also released to commemorate, commem- commemorate her in 1998. The University of Pune was renamed Savitri Bai Phule University in 2014. Shankaracharya or Adi Shankara. Adi Shankara was an early 8th century Indian philosopher and theologian who consolidated the doctrine of Advaita Vedanta. He is credited with unifying and establishing the main currents of thought in Hinduism. His works in Sanskrit discuss the unity of the Atman and Nirguna. Brahman. Brahman without attributes. He wrote copious of commentaries on the Vedic canon, Brahma Sutras, principal Upanishads, and Bhagavad Gita in support of his thesis. His works elaborate on ideas found in the Upanishads. Shankara's publications criticized the ritually oriented Mimamsa school of Hinduism. He also explained the key difference between Hinduism and Buddhism, stating that Hinduism asserts Atman, soul, self exists, while Buddhism asserts that there is no soul, no self. Shankaracharya traveled across the Indian subcontinent to propagate his philosophy through discourses and debates with other thinkers. He established the importance of monastic life as sanctioned in the Upanishads and Brahma Sutra in a time when Mimamsa school established strict ritualism and ridiculed monasticism. He is reputed to have founded four matas, monasteries, which helped in the historical development of revival and spread of Advaita Vedanta, of which he is known as the greatest revivalist. Revivalist Adi Shankara is believed to be the organizer of Dai Dashanami monastic order and unified the Shanmata tradition of worship. He is also known as Adi Shankara. Adi Shankara was most likely born in the southern Indian state of Kerala, according to the oldest biographies, in a village named as Kaladi, sometimes spelled as Kalati or Karati, but some tests suggest the birthplace to be Chidambaram in Tamil Nadu. His father died while Shankara was very young. Shankara's that Upanayana initiation into student life had to be delayed due to the death of his father and was then performed by his mother. Idol of Adi Shankara at his Samadhi Mandir behind Kedarnath temple in Kedarnath, India. Murti of Adi Shankara at Sat temple in Santa Cruz, California. Shankara's autobiography describes him as someone who was attracted to the life of sannyasa hermit from early childhood. His mother disapproved. A story found in all autobiographies describes the Shankara at age 8 going to a river with his mother Shivatarka to bath, and where he is caught by a crocodile. Shankara called out to his mother to give help, permission to become a sannyasi, or else the crocodile will kill him. The mother agrees. Shankara is freed and leaves his home for education. He reaches a Saivite sanctuary along with a river in a north central state of India and becomes the disciple of a teacher named Govinda Bhagavat Pada. The stories in various autobiographies diverge in details about the first meeting between Shankara and his guru, where they met, as well as what happened later. Several texts, such as Shankara's schooling with Govinda Pada, happened along the river Narmada in Omkareshwara. A few place it along river Ganges in Kashi, Varanasi, as well as Badrinath in the Himalayas. The biographies vary in their description of where he went, who he met, and debated, and many other details of his life. Most mention Shankara studying the Vedas, Upanishads, and Brahma Sutra with Govindapada and Shankara authorizing several key works. In his youth, while he was studying with his teacher, it is with his teacher Govinda that Shankara studied Gaudapadya Karika, as Govinda was himself taught by Gaudapada. Most also mention a meeting with scholars of the Mimamsa school of Hinduism, namely Kumarila and Kumarila, Kumarila and Prabhakara, as well as Mandana and various Buddhists in Shastras and Indian tradition public philosophical debates attended by large number of people, sometimes with royalty. Therefore, thereafter, the biographies about the Shankara vary significantly. Different and widely inconsistent accounts of his life include diverse journeys, pilgrims, public debates, installation of yantras, lingas, as well as founding of monastic centers in north, east, south, west India. Philosophical tour and disciples. While the details and chronology vary, most biographies mention Adi Shankara traveling widely within India, Gujarat to Bengal, and participating in public philosophical with debates with different orthodox schools of Hindu philosophy, as well as heterodox traditions such as Buddhists, Jains, Harta, Arhartas, Harthas, Saugatas, and Karvakas during his tours. He is credited with starting several matas monasteries, however, this is uncertain. 10 monastic orders in different parts of India are generally attributed to Shankara's travel inspired the Sannyasin schools, each with Advaita notations, of which four have continued in his tradition: Bharati Sringeri, Saraswati, Kanchi, Tirtha, and Ashram in Dwaraka. Other monasteries that record Shankara's visit include Giri, Puri, Vana, Aryana, Parvata, Sagara, all names traceable to ashrama system in Hinduism and Vedic literature. Adi Shankara had a number of disciple scholars during his travels, including Padmapada, also called Sanananda, associated with the text Atma Bodha, Sureshwara Totaka, and Sitosuka, and Prithvidara, and Sidvisyati, Bodhendra, Brahmendra, Sadananda, and others who authored their own literature on Shankara and Advaita Vedanta. Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya was born in India during the year 1017 AD, when, according to astrological calculation, the sun was in the zodiacal sign of Cancer. His parents were Asuri Keshava and Kantimati, both from aristocratic families. Ramanuja passed his childhood days in Sri Perumdur, the village of his birth. At the age of 16, he was married to Kambal. Only 4 months after his wedding, Ramanuja's father was struck with a severe illness and died. Upon the death of upon the death of his father, Ramanuja became head of the household and decided to move to Kanchi, a holy city famed for its scholars and magnificent temples. In Kanchi, there lived a scholar named Yadava Prakash, who was renowned for his scholarship in the doctrine of Advaita Vedanta. Non dualism. No one could surpass Yadava in his ability to explain Shankara's commentaries on Vedanta Sutra. Ramanuja enrolled in Yadava school and engaged in the study of Sanskrit and Vedic literature. Although not only although not only Ramanuja enrolled in Yadava school and engaged in the study of Sanskrit and Vedic literature, although not at all convinced by the Sanskrit conception. Ramanuja learned his lessons well and soon became one of Yadava's favorite students. Thinking Ramanuja to be a sincere follower of the conclusions of Shankara, Yadava showed Ramanuja special affection, but that affection did not last for long. One day, after delivering a disclosure on the Chandayog Upanishad, Yadava asked Ramanuja to massage his body with oil as was the customary service to be performed by a student in those days. While giving the massage to his teacher, another student came to Yadava for some clarification on a point from the morning discourse. The boy had failed to grasp the meaning of the seventh verse of the first chapter, which began with Tasya Vata Kapvamsa Kapvamsam Pundarikam Ivam Akshini. Yadava proceeded to expound an interpretation which described the sublime qualities of God-Ed in a manner which was flagrantly objectionable. On hearing the words of his teacher, the art of Ramanuja, which was full of love for the supreme Godhead, was saddened, and hot tears streamed down from his eyes and fell on the tie of Yadava. Looking up a touch of the hot tears, Yadava could understand that something was troubling Ramanuja. When he inquired about Ramanuja's distress, Ramanuja replied, "O great and wise master, I have been sorely afflicted at heart to hear such unbecoming explanation from a noble soul like you. How sinful it is of you to debase the Supreme, who is endowed with all gracious qualities and who is source of all beautiful things in this world. From the mouth of such a learned man as you yourself, I would never have expected such a low and deceitful interpretation." Yadava became so angry that he could hardly control himself. "Well, then," he scorned, "maybe you would like to give your own interpretation since you obviously think you know better than I." In a very gentle voice, Ramanuja replied, "Reverse, sir. There is no need to give a low minded interpretation to the verse when the real meaning is direct and glorious. Then let us hear this meaning of yours, which is so glorious," said Yadava. Ramanuja then stood and with great humility recited the meaning of the verse. "The two eyes of Supreme are as lovely as two lotuses that are blossomed by the rays of the sun." "I see," said Yadava. "You speak as though there actually was such a supreme person. That is due to your childish ignorance. You have not learned your lessons properly. You should always remember that Supreme is without form, without name, and without attributes. That is the teaching of the great Shankara. In the future, you should not voice your foolish sentiments." The words of Yadava were painful to Ramanuja's ears, but out of respect for his teacher, he remained silent. A few days later, a second incident occurred while explaining a verse from the Taittiriya Upanishad beginning with Satyam Jnanam Antam Brahma Anantam Brahma. Yadava said the Brahman was intelligence, truth, and infinite. Hearing this explanation, Ramanuja politely added, Brahman is endowed with qualities of intelligence, truth, and the infinite. This means that he is not covered by ignorance as are ordinary living entities. He is never untruthful and his energies are unlimited, not limited. The Supreme Brahmana is the reservoir of all good qualities, yet he is superior to those qualities as the sun globe is superior to sunlight. The agitation which Yadava felt within his mind made this voice tremble. You young fool, he shouted, your conclusions do not agree with those of Shankara or any of previous masters. If you are going to Paris persist with this useless talk about a personal of God. Why come here at all simply to waste my time? Why don't you start your own school and teach whatever you like? Now get out of my classroom immediately. As Ramanuja rose from his seat and quietly left the room, Yadava began to reflect this Ramanuja is not an ordinary boy. If he starts his own school, the philosophy of devotion might become a threat to philosophy of non-dualism. For the sake of preserving our doctrine, this fool should be killed. Shortly thereafter, Ramanuja opened a small school at his home, and in no time, many people began to come to him to hear his devotional discourses. Ramanuja's lectures were wholly theistic, and he rejected the concept that the Jiva, a living entity, could be equal to the Supreme Brahman or become God as postulated by Shankara. The living entity Ramanuja thought is a practical of Godhead, and as such, his position is to serve the complete whole. He said that as the and is a part of the body and thus a servant of the body. Similarly, the living entity of the is a part of the supreme and thus a constitutionally position is to serve the supreme. Ramanuja's Ramanuja's philosophy became known as Vishishta Advaita or qualified non-dualism. Accordingly, the living entities are believed to qualitative one with supreme and at the same time quantitative different. Be quantitatively one with the supreme and at the same time quantitatively be qualitatively one with the supreme and at the same time quantitatively different. Ramanuja's assertion was that the quantitative difference means that the fragmentary parts of the supreme are dependent on the supreme, but they cannot become the supreme. The philosophy of Shankara stated that everything is Brahman and Brahman itself is absolutely homogeneous, undifferentiated, and without personality. Individuality arose only due to illusion or Maya. But this concept was sanctually opposed by Ramanuja. His philosophy stated that there can never be knowledge of an unqualified object. Knowledge necessarily points to an object as characterized in some way. Ramanuja never admitted to an undifferentiated Brahman, but rather a Brahman which is an attribute of a greater reality, God Ed himself. He reasoned that as the living entities are individual personalities, so too is the Supreme also a personality, the ultimate personality. Ramanuja further reasoned that if illusion could cover the identity of the Supreme, then illusion was greater than God-id. Therefore, he asserted that we are eternally individual personality and the Supreme is eternally the Supreme personality. But due to our finite nature, we are sometimes subject to illusion. Ramanuja also accepted the theory of transformation rejected by Shankara. According to Shankara, the material world is false. It has no existence. Ramanuja, on the other hand, said that the material world is the energy of God-id and the subjective reality does not undergo any change of substance in the matter of material manifestation. In the same way that a singer who creates a song out of his own energy is not diminished due to this creation, rather, he becomes more glorious. Ramanuja also accepted the theory of transformation rejected by Shankara. According to Shankara, the material word is false. It has no existence. Ramanuja, on the other hand, said that the material would be energy. Material word is the energy, the God of Godhead, and the subjective reality does not undergo any change of substance in the matter of material manifestation in the same way that a singer who creates a song out of his own energy is not diminished due to his creation, rather, he becomes more glorious. Neither the material world nor the living entities are conceived of as being independent of the Supreme Personality in the system of Vishishta Advaita philosophy. The living entities are a different manifestation of the Supreme due to their being endowed with a free will, whereas the material energy is manifest directly under the will of Supreme. The free will of the living entity is an all important factor since that free will is considered to be the basic principle of reciprocal relations between God, Ed, and the living entity. Ramanuja presented the living entity's relationship with God, Ed as being one of the eternal service. According to Ramanuja, when the living entities are freed from the illusions produced by the material energy by the method of devotion and natural love of God are like the dealings between affectionate servant and his master, then soul enters the spiritual sky known as Vaikunta. Once having reached the Vaikunta world, the soul engages in eternal service to the Supreme Person Narayana Vishnu. This sublime message was daily imparted by Ramanuja to his listeners. Seeing the growing popularity of Ramanuja and the influence which he had on the people of Kanchi, the proud and arrogant Yadava Prakash became restless, gathering his faithful students by his side. Yadava said, Yadava said that Yadava Prakash became restless, gathering his faithful students by his side. Yadava said, "This impudent Ramanuja is a heretic. He is a nuisance to society and a threat to our doctrines of non dualism. I can see no other solution to the problem than to kill the rascal. To kill this rascal. What do you say? Yadava's disciples were in complete agreement with their teacher since they too were envious of Ramanuja, thus, they devised a plan to kill him. On the plea of worshipping the sacred river Ganges, Yadava and his disciples made arrangement for the pilgrimage to Banaras and asked Ramanuja if he would like to join them. Uns- Unsuspecting of their treacherous plan, Ramanuja accepted the invitation. As the group was about to depart, Ramanuja requested his cousin Govinda to accompany him. On the fourth day of their journey, Govinda was taken into confidence by some of Yadava's younger students who disclosed the plan to kill Ramanuja. Shocked at the evil intentions of Yadava and his followers, Govinda took Ramanuja to a secure place in the forest and informed him of danger. Govinda requested Ramanuja to flee into the forest immediately before it was too late. Govinda then returned to the camp and told the others that while he and Ramanuja were looking for wild berries in the forest, two tiger had pounced upon Ramanuja and dragged his helpless body away. Outwardly, Yadava and his disciples displayed symptoms of sorrow, but inwardly their hearts leaped with joy. Ramanuja was now gone from their lives forever, or so they thought. While wandering across the countryside, trying to find his way home, Ramanuja came to a well where a man and woman were busy drawing water to take to their village. The couple offered Ramanuja a cup of water to relieve his thirst. After drinking, Ramanuja lay down to rest and fell into a dreamful sleep. He dreamt that while walking in the forest, he saw the incarnation of Godhead Ramachandra and his contrast Sita Devi, who showed him the way to his village. When Ramanuja awoke from his dream, the man and woman at well were gone. As he looked around, he saw that he was now on the outskirts of Kanchi. How he had gotten there, he could not ascertain, save and except that it was by a miracle. Ramanuja resembled his normal life at Kanchi and did not reveal at anyone that his life had been in danger. Several months passed until one day Yadava and his disciples finally returned to Kanchi after completing their pilgrimage. They were staggered at sight of Ramanuja alive and conducting his school as usual. Thinking that their plan might have been discovered, they became fearful and abandoned any further plans to kill Ramanuja. The fame of Ramanuja continued to spread far and wide one day as Ramanuja sat in the solitude of his study. A venerable saint named Yamunacharya came to his door for alms. Extending his full courtesy, Ramanuja welcomed the saint into his home. Ramanuja learned that Yamuna was from Sri Rangam, the famous temple of Vishnu. In the course of their discussion, Ramanuja soon realized that Yamunacharya was a qualified spiritual master of the science of devotion. Overwhelmed with ecstasy and jubilation, and Ramanuja fell at his feet and answered to be accepted as his disciple. Yamuna instantly raised Ramanuja up from the floor and embracing him with deep love said, "My child, I am blessed. Today, my seeing your devotion to God. May you live a long and fruitful life, always being intent in the service of Narayana, the personality of God-Ed." Ramanuja then circumambulated his guru to invoke auspiciousness, and Yamuna left for Sri Rangam. Now, more than ever, Ramanuja preached the doctrine of devotion with strength and conviction, so convicting Ramanuja is in his presentation that even Yadava Prakash and his followers surrendered and became the disciples of Ramanuja. Then one day a messenger came from Srirangam and informed Ramanuja that his guru was one and on the verge of death. Ramanuja immediately departed for Srirangam but was not able to reach there in time. Shortly before Ramanuja arrived, Yamuna left his body and entered the blissful realm of Vaikunta. Crossing the river Kaveri, Ramanuja reached the island on which the temple Srirangam was located and went directly to the place where his guru was lying. Surrounded by a group of disciples, Yamuna laid on a bed with his eyes closed in his arms outstretched at his sides and his face shining as if immersed in thoughts of infinite beauty. Momentarily, everyone's attention focused on Ramanuja, and as he entered the room and came to sit by the side of his guru, tears of love filled his eyes and he wept. His heart feeling great separation from his master. The left hand of Yamuna was poised in the yoga posture for peace, with the three fingers extended and thumb and forefinger joined together at the tips. His right hand, however, was at his side but clenched into fist. All disciples were struck with wonder after the position of their guru's right hand, and none of them could understand the meaning. As everyone looked on in wonder, Ramanuja broke the silence by declaring, "Our Guru, the revered Yamunacharya, has three desires that he wishes to be fulfilled. I will protect the people in general who are deluded, deluded, deluded by impersonalism by bestowing upon them the nectar of surrender at the lotus feet of Narayana." As Ramanuja spoke, one of the fingers on Yamuna's right hand extended outward. Then Ramanuja said, "For the well being of the people of the world, I will prepare a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra that will establish the Supreme Person as ultimate reality." At this, a second finger extended, and Ramanuja continued speaking, and in order to honor Para, Parashara Muni, who in ancient times established the relation between Jivas, living entities, and Ishvara, the Supreme Person, I shall name one of my disciples who is greatly learned and devoted after him. Ramanuja then became silent, and the third finger on the third right hand of Yamuna extended. Everyone present was amazed to see this miracle, and from that day on, they all accepted Ramanuja as their leader and guide. Ramanuja continued to live at Sri Rangam for reminder of his life, and in due course, all three vows were fulfilled by him. Although he lived for many years as a successful householder, Ramanuja was destined to accept the path of renunciation. Eventually, he took up the renowned order of life sannyasa by going before the deity in the temple and the praying to be exclusively engaged in the service of Godhead. From that day forward, Ramanuja always wore that symbol of Narayana on his forehead, dressed in a saffron cloth, and carried the renunciate three-sectioned staff which signified service to God by body, mind, and words. So powerful was Ramanuja that the philosopher of non dualism soon found it difficult to maintain their position in any kingdom. Ramanuja established the tenets of devotion so firmly that none could oppose him. Many great and learned scholars came to hear him speak and become his disciples.